Hi, greetings. My name is Robbie Warren, Otter Woman Standing, and I would like to share with you a little bit today about the shamanic practice of soul retrieval. In my practice as a shaman and as a medicine woman, I'm often asked about the process or the ceremony of soul retrieval, and believe it or not, it is actually, while it is a very deep healing work and a very deep ceremony, it is actually something that is very common, especially in this day and time. So I do get a lot of questions about it, and people want to know, is soul retrieval right for me, or is this what my issue is? Or anyway, I just get a lot of questions about it. So I thought that I would just share a little bit with you today about my experience, what I've been taught, and what my experiences have been with the process and the ceremony, the healing ceremony of soul retrieval. So I should start off by talking just a little bit about, the idea of soul retrieval. What that means is that, or the premise behind it, the understanding behind it, is that when we experience a trauma in our lives, and trauma, what is traumatic for one person is not traumatic for another person. So, we have to remember that sometimes these traumas are with a big T, and sometimes they're with a small t, and we're not talking about trauma as defined by Western medicine, Western psychiatric medicine, although all of that does fall into it. There is a lot of subtlety that can come in that can create trauma in our experience. So we're not here to judge, what creates that soul loss for one or another, or to compare those. They're all big, they're all big. So the first thing is to explain a little bit about how soul loss occurs. And when we experience a trauma in our lives, in that moment, our soul, which, believe it or not, our soul is very tender, and gentle, and is easily shocked, so to speak. And so, soul loss occurs when we have a trauma. And when something happens in our experience, either to us or in front of us, we either witness it or we experience it ourselves, that it is a shock to our soul. And so what happens is our soul, in order to protect us, will split off that small piece of the soul that was traumatized. And that small piece of the soul then moves outside of our body, of this vessel that we're in a way to protect and keep safe. And so a lot of people, when they experience soul loss, in the moment that they experience that, they experience what Western medicine often refers to as dissociation. And the best example I have of this is that almost all of us can either have experienced or heard of someone who says, they got in their car to go to the store and they weren't going very far. And, they wake up in the hospital and they can't remember what happened. In fact, a lot of times they'll say, I don't even remember leaving my home. When in reality, what happened is they left their home and they got in the car and they drove down the road and they were in a severe accident that left them unconscious or incapacitated in some way, and they were taken to the hospital. When they wake up, they don't remember the accident. And most times they don't remember even just a small space of time right before the accident. So in that moment where, you see that accident coming, where you realize you're going to experience this trauma, is when that soul would split apart. And, and this is a fairly common thing. This is not that uncommon for us. This is the way that the soul protects our psyche, that we might not be ready to process this fully with our cognitive abilities, and so we need a break. We just need a break. We need a little distance from it. So the soul protects us in that way. So the way that soul loss shows up in our lives, if we don't have a soul retrieval done after, say, this car accident, we don't have the soul retrieval done, then over time, what starts to show up are as we call the symptoms of soul loss. And those symptoms can show up in a variety of things for different people. It can show up as mild depression. or just a sense of sadness, or sometimes feeling stuck, like things aren't moving forward. You know, you can feel a little stuck in your life. Sometimes it shows up as anger, or, you know, quick to anger, you know. So there's a lot of different ways that soul loss shows up in our lives. And, you know, back in the day when we all lived in small villages, and we were, you know, living a tribal life, and there was a medicine person in every tribe, in every village, if we experienced a soul loss, then within a few days, usually within a few days, the medicine person of the tribe would gather the tribe together, would gather all of the community together, and they would do a soul retrieval. And the community would come in, and this was actually time for a celebration. So the community would come in and sing while the shaman or the medicine person was going into trance and going to retrieve these pieces of the soul and bring them back. And so it was in a lot of different traditions, it's called singing the soul home, because the whole tribe comes together and sings that piece home. So where we are today now in our modern world is that we continually experience these traumas. And within days, there is no one who is singing our soul home. There is no one who is going into the other dimensions, into the other realms, and retrieving that piece of our soul and bringing it back and integrating it back into our body. So what happens is we have trauma after trauma after trauma. And so in one lifetime, you know, it is possible for one person to lose multiple pieces of their soul, multiple parts. So this is where soul retrieval comes in. Most soul retrieval, most medicine people and shamans who do soul retrieval, the ceremony is done and the pieces retrieved are usually from this current lifetime. But there are a few of us who actually do soul retrieval into other lifetimes, other past lives, as we would call them, but into other lifetimes, and witness, you know, and see the trauma that happened in other lifetimes and bring them back in. So we can get into a whole lot of quantum physics about that, and I'm not going to go too crazy into that, other than to say traumas that we have experienced in past lives, if we did not get a soul retrieval, if we did not have those pieces brought back to us in those past lives, then what can happen in this current life is that the echoes of the energy of that trauma from that other lifetime can start to come into this lifetime and have an effect on us. And I have seen that, for example, I had one client who was just, you know, deathly afraid of water. She was so afraid of water that even the idea of driving across a very large bridge where she would be perfectly safe, it terrified her. And, you know, she would find that she couldn't get herself across the bridge, or maybe she would have to have somebody else drive the car, and she could cover her eyes. But it was a big trauma around water. She would not go into the ocean. She would not go into lakes. She would not go into swimming pools. She never took a bath. She only took showers. And, you know, there was no explanation for this in her current lifetime. There was nothing that she experienced that would bring about such a deep fear of water. And this was just one of the many things that was happening in her life, but it was so profound. So when I did the soul retrieval for her, and when I went into the other lifetime and I could see what was happening, I could see her trauma. She was in a situation where she had drowned in a past lifetime. And in the middle of that drowning, the soul piece split apart just before she died. So that soul piece was left there in that lifetime, you know, in that trauma. And so it was echoing into this lifetime. So once we do a soul retrieval, the beauty is that there is an integration that happens. So when a medicine person goes into the other realms and we literally bring back that piece, we find it, we grab a hold of it, you know, and we bring it back and we integrate it into the body of our client through our breath. We blow that piece of the soul back into the body. And sometimes immediately a client may feel a rush of emotion, or they may feel something very physical that is happening. And so once that physical integration is complete, then I also explain what I saw and what I witnessed. And so in this, the client does not re-experience the trauma. It is not a place where the client re-experiences the trauma. I go and witness it. So it is told to my client secondhand. There is no reason to re-traumatize a person during soul retrieval or during any shamanic or medicine work. It is not about pushing those boundaries and creating or re-traumatizing. So, you know, and the beauty of this is that with the soul piece that comes back, with the knowledge of what the experience was that created the soul loss, all of those things can now integrate together so that after you have a soul retrieval done, you can move forward in your life in a good way. The things that used to trigger you, now you would be able to recognize that it is not life or death. It doesn't have to feel like such a panic. You can recognize what's happening, and you have an opportunity to respond rather than react. And that's the beauty of this. And what I find is that over a very short period of time, most of my clients find that they are not even triggered up anymore by what is happening. They don't have that same panic come up, or the depression, or the feeling stuck. That all of that starts to ease, and they start to see that they can move through this lifetime in a really good way. So it is a beautiful healing tool, and it seems rather complicated, but it really is quite simple. So I wanted to share this with you, with anyone who is interested or has questions about soul retrieval, so that you can get a better idea of how this goes and what happens. So I hope this gives you a little bit better understanding, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.